Liselotte Neubauer was born on May 20th, 1927, in Munster, Germany, to Franz and Johanna Neubauer. She had one older brother, also named Franz, who was 8 years older than her. In 1933, Adolf Hitler rose to power. Political parades and marches were common in the streets of Munster, as were propaganda posters and signs. Also in 1933, Liselotte began kindergarten, and every day when she walked to and from school, she passed by a Jewish-only school, where teenagers from the neighboring high school shouted insults at the children there. In 1939, it was mandatory for all young men, once they finished gymnasium, or high school, to serve in Germany's army for at least 2 years. Lieselotte's brother Franz finished gymnasium in 1939, so when Liselotte was 11, he prepared to join. Sometime around March, he left Munster to head to training. Liselotte and her parents were proud that Franz was doing so well until September came. World War II started, and now they had no idea when Franz would be able to come home, or if he would actually make it home in the first place. Besides a few letters, they had no clue where he was in Europe. France, Italy, Romania, Poland, Soviet Union. He was traveling everywhere and anywhere, and he was traveling there mostly on foot. When England entered the war on September 3rd, 1939, it all got more dangerous, especially since Lieselotte's family lived in a large city. Air raids and bombing planes became a constant nightly threat. Everyone was required to come to the town hall to receive gas masks and black towels to cover up their windows each night, so the English planes flying above couldn't tell where homes or cities were. At first, the main target of the planes was Berlin, the capital, but then they began to focus on Munster also. Liselotte was terrified at the beginning, because every night there was a chance a bomb could drop right on top of her apartment. However, as the situation got worse in 1940, bomb shelters were built throughout Munster. One was built 10 minutes away from their apartment, and frequently each night, Liselotte and her family would hear the sirens and run the 10-minute trek to the nearby shelter. Liselotte felt much more secure and safe there, compared to cowering in her basement previously, so her fear then wasn't too high or serious. Once the sirens would come on again, saying all was clear, they'd follow Franz Sr. back home. One night while they were hurrying to the shelter, Johanna, who was aging and had trouble walking, fell down, but luckily she persisted and got up right away. Still, everyone was scared for an instant, because there was not much time left to reach the shelter, but thankfully Johanna was able to keep on going. As the danger of living in Munster rose, Liselotte's parents became increasingly more worried about her safety, as she was only 13. So in fall 1940, they sent her to a boarding school in the countryside, a few miles away from Munster. The school was led by Catholic nuns and populated by people who Liselotte didn't know. Since she was accustomed to being around her classmates whom she knew well, Liselotte quickly grew lonely, homesick, and bored with lessons. When she returned home for a quick vacation, she firmly told her parents, "I'm not going back there." While this was all happening, the Holocaust was worsening. Liselotte knew that Jews and Gypsies and other targeted groups were being taken away and attacked, but she remained oblivious to the fact of where they were being deported to and what atrocities were happening there. Since concentration camps were kept a secret from the main German public, aside from the officials who ran them. Liselotte's parents thought Hitler was too ambitious, greedy, and just a plain Dummkopf, or dumbhead in German. When Hitler was just gaining power, signs of his face were being put up in every public building. Liselotte's father worked in one as a public works director. When a Hitler portrait was hung in his office, he told workers, "As fast as you can put that picture up, it will come even faster down." His boss prevented him from receiving any promotions later because of what he had said. When school time came around again, in autumn 1941, Liselotte's parents agreed to send her to a different school, where she wouldn't feel so left out. They agreed upon sending her to a school in the southern, mountainous state of Bavaria. The school was 750 miles away from home, but at least Liselotte would be attending with many of her classmates and teachers from before the war. Still, as Liselotte and her classmates pulled away from their families in the station, even though Liselotte was a 14-year-old girl, she couldn't help but feel lonesome and tearful. Their sad departures were immediately pushed to the back of their minds, however, when the girls reached their destination. The school was in a quaint little village called Bad Reichenhall. They all lived in a bed and breakfast, which served as their school and quarters. 6 girls stayed in each room, with bunk beds. They played jokes and pranks each night, and each morning different people were assigned to rise earlier than everyone else to sing the Guten Morgen song on each floor. The bed and breakfast dining room was made into classrooms with portable walls, and the cafeteria was built there too. There were weekly hikes in the surrounding Alps, and the class helped out at a local farm, milking cows and doing other duties. Everything was going well, and Liselotte felt extremely carefree and happy. They almost forgot that a war was going on and their parents were in the heat of it, until they received reports that the U.S. had joined World War II also, in late 1941, and that meant even more planes swooping over their families back home in Munster. Liselotte and her classmates became extremely worried, since there was no way of knowing whether their families were alive or not. Liselotte returned home almost 3 years later, in the spring of 1944, just barely 17 years old. She had only received an informal graduation, with no true certificate or record. However, there was little concern to Liselotte at the time, because a war was raging back home. Liselotte returned home to Munster, where she immediately received a surprise. Only her father awaited her at home. Horror-struck at first, she was then told that her parents had moved to the safer countryside also, to a far-away small town called Rheinhold, and only her father had come home for a few days to welcome her. The next day they left for Rheinhold together, where Liselotte greeted her mother also. Liselotte heard the news on her radio, and told Franz Sr. that there had been an assassination attempt towards Hitler. He immediately perked up from mowing the lawn, and asked optimistically, "Was it successful?" Liselotte told her father it had not been, and he expressed his disappointment with harsh words. In February 1945, the Americans and the British forces began moving steadily closer to the center of Germany. So many German soldiers were being killed that the German army began recruiting young women to operate and fire anti-aircraft machines up towards enemy planes. Even though Liselotte didn't support Hitler, she felt that she needed to be doing something to help her country and soldiers, especially since her brother was out fighting somewhere too, but she definitely didn't want to do that. Inspiration came to her while she was walking with her father by Rheinhold's town hall. A large banner hung by the door saying, "Join the Red Cross." She turned to Franz Sr., her father, and said, "That's what I want to do." Liselotte went into the town hall where an officer sat at a table. She told him she was interested in becoming a Red Cross nurse. He promptly asked, "How old are you?" Liselotte replied, 17 years old. "Sorry, you're too young. The minimum age to join is 18. Desperately, Liselotte told him, "In 3 months I will be 18. The officer pondered her for a moment before saying, "All right, here's the paperwork. The demand for nurses is high anyway. Just mark your age as 18 and your birthday is a year earlier than it really is." Thankfully, Liselotte filled out the paperwork. She was very relieved that she would be tending to soldiers rather than shooting them down on the battlefield. In late April 1945, Liselotte, her roommate Anna, Anna's boyfriend Andreas, and Andreas's friend Klaus made plans to run away from Buchholz. They knew that the war was lost and didn't want to be captured by Allied forces, since it was known that they would be taken captive if found at their station. One night, Liselotte and Anna jumped out of their first-floor window where Andreas and Klaus were waiting on the ground. The four of them walked 15 miles that night to the village where Liselotte's parents were staying, Rheinhold. They all felt anxious to get to their destination as fast as possible, and nervous that they might be seen by anyone. Once they reached Rheinhold in the early morning, Liselotte said goodbye to her friends. They were going to continue on farther into the Alps, while Liselotte wanted to stay with her parents. A few days later, Franz Sr. and her decided they wanted to travel to Munster to see how their old apartment building was doing, and judge when they think it would be possible to move back in. The only form of transportation they had was one bike. They took turns wheeling the bike filled with supplies on the way there. Farmers offered their wagons as taxis to go from village to village faster. When they met citizens on the street, they would ask if they had room in their house for more people, and then if the person did, that's where they'd spend the night. After 4 days, they finally reached Munster. The whole back wall of the apartment was gone, and there was a crater in the backyard and one in the street. Franz Sr. stayed in Munster while Liselotte biked back, this time taking only 1 day because she could now bike herself. Johanna and Liselotte came 2 weeks later, and they moved permanently back in, while repairs were being made to the back wall. One day while Liselotte was walking to a store in Munster, along the way she saw bodies of American and German soldiers in the ditches and culverts on the side of the road, as a battle had been going on right where she was now standing. Standing there, Liselotte was shocked and saddened to see the young bodies now so still. Liselotte and Franz Sr. once again set out on a trip together to receive Liselotte's extra belongings from her nurse station that had not fit into her suitcase when she had ran away. Just after they had collected Liselotte's things and were leaving, a former doctor came up to Liselotte and told her, "You're lucky the war is over and we lost, because otherwise you and your friends would have been executed for deserting us." Liselotte was speechless, but later felt lucky that she couldn't be executed now because Germany was no longer in control. Liselotte and her parents still had no idea where Franz Jr. was. Even though the war was now over, they had no clue if he was still living. Liselotte especially was really worried about where he was, because Franz Jr. was her only sibling. Plus, Franz Jr. was married and his wife Ursel was expecting a son. On a hot day in August 1945, down the street came Franz Jr. He wasted no time in explaining what had happened to him. While in southern Germany in April 1945, he and other soldiers had been taken captive by American troops and held as a prisoner of war for 6 weeks. After he had told his family his story, he asked, "Where is Ursel?" questioning about his wife. But Liesel